Hello friends, my name is Joey Benami and I'm in my van. No, I don't live in a van. I'm just taking my kids to football and I'm taking advantage of the time because I have a lot to do. So I'm gonna just read my paper. The book I chose was Why I Am Not a Christian by Bertrand Russell. In reviewing this book, I will seek to show four main topics present in Russell's philosophy, consistently traced throughout his work. I will also offer alternative views and lines of argumentation not considered by him. Indispensable for analyzing Russell's philosophy is his personal life. I will show how it both forms his philosophical presuppositions and reveals the outwork of his views. In conclusion, I will draw an ethical application based on this review. Russell's life as background to his philosophy. Bertrand Russell was born May 18, 1872 in Trelech, Wales, and died February 2, 1970 in Merioneth, Wales. He was one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. He won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1950, having published over 70 books. He was also known as an anti-war pacifist, more notably protesting the Vietnam War as an 80-year-old man. Of his Christian education, he said, "I was not taught to suppose that everything in the Bible was true, or to believe in miracles and eternal perdition. Darwinism was accepted." Of his early years, Russell writes, "When I was about 14, my thoughts turned to theology. During the 4 following years, I rejected successively free will, immortality, and belief in God." Utilitarianism rounds up Russell's early philosophical presupposition. And I have a quote here. "At the age of 14, I became persuaded that the fundamental principle of ethics should be the promotion of human happiness." Russell's adult life was tumultuous. After realizing that he had fallen out of love with his first wife, Alice, he had multiple affairs. He married his second wife, Dora Black, and they were opposed to traditional sexual morality and favored open marriage. Russell continued to have sexual affairs, and Dora had 2 children with an American journalist, all while married to each other. He left Dora for Patricia, nicknamed Peter Spence, a university student decades younger than him. Their marriage was also short-lived. He was famously denied a teaching post at the City College of New York over his views on sex and marriage. I will turn to Russell's ethics later. Summary of the book. Why I Am Not a Christian is a compilation of speeches and articles by Russell dating from 1903 to as recent as 1947. Naturally, a work spanning such a wide time lapse will show development in a philosopher's views, but it is also valuable in tracing the enduring issues that preoccupy him or her throughout their life work. The 4 areas of young Russell's realization, atheism, immortality, determinism, and utilitarianism, constitute a perfect summary of the book. The book is a sampling of these 4 points taken at different times in Russell's life, demonstrating how pervasive they are to his long-held views. That cohesion and representative nature are a strength of the book. Russell's definition of Christianity in the first speech sets up the content of the book well as he proceeds in the subsequent chapters to expand on why he cannot be a Christian. He writes, I think, however, that there are two different items which are quite essential to anybody calling himself a Christian. The first is one of a dogmatic nature, namely that you must believe in God and immortality. If you do not believe in those two things, I do not think that you can properly call yourself a Christian. You must have, at the very least, at the very lowest, the belief that Christ was, if not divine, at least the best and wisest of men. Russell argues against the existence of God and attempts to show how Christ and his teachings are rather unwise and not better than Buddha's or Socrates. He employs a straw man argument that can be summarized as, because the church has failed to practice Christ's teachings, therefore Christ's teachings are flawed. Russell attributes the world's evils to religion, particularly to Christianity. The three human impulses, he says, embodied in religion are fear, conceit, and hatred. The purpose of religion, one may say, is to give an air of respectability to these passions. I will now summarize Russell's four enduring presuppositions and offer alternative views. Point 1. The existence of God. Russell defines his argument as, everything we see in this world has a cause, and as you go back in the chain of causes further and further, you must come to a first cause, and to that first cause you give the name of God. Response. Russell misinterprets or misrepresents this argument. It should be, 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist. 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Moreland and Craig conclude that, for as the cause of space and time, this entity, cause, must transcend space and time, and therefore exist atemporally and non-spatially, at least without the universe. This transcendent cause must therefore be changeless and immaterial, since timelessness entails changelessness, and changelessness implies immateriality. Such a cause must be beginningless and uncaused, at least in the sense of lacking any antecedent causal conditions. This entity must be unimaginably powerful, since it created the universe without any material cause. There are two types of causal explanations. Scientific explanations in terms of laws and initial conditions, and personal explanations in terms of agents and their volitions. The personhood of the cause of the universe is implied by its timelessness and immateriality, since the only entities we know of that can possess such properties are either minds or abstract object. Therefore, the transcendent cause of the origin of the universe must be of the order of mind. Thus, we are brought not merely to a transcendent cause of the universe, but to its personal creator. Point number 2, immortality. Russell's argument against the immortality of the soul is expressed in his disdain for philosophy's dualism of body and mind, him being a physicalist. Response. Russell sustains that we are merely chemical forces, but in order to reason and arrive at that conclusion, certain mental processes are necessary, thus rendering physicalism self-refuting, and providing a foundation for dualism, a distinguishing of mental properties from physical ones, and personal identity capable of surviving through physical changes. At the very least, this allows for the biblical teaching of the immortality of the soul and the resurrection of the body. Point number 3, determinism. Russell writes, "We and all animals are simply kept going by chemical forces and are nothing more wonderful than a tree, which no one pretends has a free will. And if we had a good knowledge of the forces acting on anyone at any time, the motives pro and con, the constitution of his brain at any time, then we could tell exactly what he would do." Response: if indeed people are as free to choose their actions as a tree is, then they are just as morally responsible. But since Russell himself opposed things like war, it follows that he believed in some form of moral responsibility. And if a person can be responsible for their actions, then it follows that they actually can choose what to do. So Russell's determinism then falls apart. Point 4, ethics. For Russell, the worst feature of the Christian religion, however, is its attitude towards sex, an attitude of so morbid and so unnatural, end quote. He decries the church's insistence on virginity as well as opposition to divorce and contraceptives at the time, in parentheses. The human happiness ethical principle Russell pursued, was largely a libertine sexual lifestyle. Response: Russell's personal life of failed marriages and evasive love is a refutation of his ethical philosophy. Russell is paraphrased as saying about marriage, just as one would tire if forced to eat bacon and eggs for breakfast forever, one tires of often begins to hate being married to the same person. Conclusion: Russell's ethics and integrative philosophy. No, Russell's ethics as integrative philosophy. Taking Russell's philosophical foundations as a whole, we can't help but see his ethics as the inevitable result of his atheistic ethics, based on determinism, physicalism, and rationalism. Rationalism was the basis of Russell's life, a Protagorean life of man as the measure of all things. Physicalism and determinism in his life meant a lack of accountability for his actions, especially his marital infidelity and repeated sexual misconduct. Moreland and Craig ask, why should I be moral? Ironically, based on Bertrand Russell's life, we can answer, because the opposite doesn't bring true happiness and the good life pursued by philosophy. Thank you very much.